All right, I started the recording. We're gonna have fun together here. All right. Can you all see my screen? Yeah, I think you can. All right. Erica, good to see you. Yeah, it's always good to see friends. All
Nice to see
right.
you too.
Yeah, fantastic. We're gonna get started here. Well, we're about 4 minutes early, but I do have an icebreaker question for y'all, and feel free to put it into chat. Think about this, right? I'm hoping you all came here because you've got something you want to operationalize with AI. You've got an opportunity. So, just a fun question. On a scale of 1 to 5, how could you describe your top business process, let's say to a new hire? Let's say someone joined your company or you had to describe this workflow to a friend. How well could you describe it or it could be a process that you're looking to reimagine with AI? On a scale from 1 to 10, it could be like, hey, I'd wing it, or on the other extreme, it would be, no, I've got this workflow really well documented, and I really understand how this workflow works, and I'm in a position to operationalize it with AI. So just go ahead. It's just a little fun little exercise. And that way I have an idea kind of where everybody's at. And I'm hoping there's lots of like ones or twos, because what I'm going to show you is a process around how do you actually do this. So feel free to just put that into chat, and feel free to also put, what was your compelling reason to spend 30 minutes with me this morning? And it could be everything from I just didn't have anything to do, or it could be, hey, I really want to learn something. And so you'll definitely learn something. I'm consulting now, so that this is a question for my clients. What's that, Erica, that you're looking to identify, or maybe say a little bit more about that before we get started?
Yeah, so I'm doing some consulting with nonprofits about how they can operationalize AI and in their processes and workflows. So this is something that I would ask them in order to give some recommendations.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and that's why I wanted to do this session, is because what I find is, like, in my work, working with companies as well as people who come to my cohort course, they take on some kind of workflow, and it's generally one. There could be the problem, as you said, Erica, like I don't even know where to start, right? How do I think about that? And then the other thing that I see is, okay, I'm ready to do this, and they take on something really big, and then they get into it, and they're like, yeah, I don't know how this thing works. Right. And it really kind of comes out. So, Matthew, I'm just getting started with interesting. Yeah, this is I'm really, and I'm interested in getting an understanding of the purpose of deconstructing. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And here's what I find is that, there's always the glossy demos and things that are out there. And the reason I wanted to do this session is because I'm going to share what I learned or have learned over the last many months, getting really deep to be really clear about what I do. And so that was the precipitous of doing that. And I haven't seen enough, I guess, how-tos and things like that about, like, how do we actually do this? Okay, we like here, most people will just want to go to the tool, right? And then they realize, like, okay, I'm really kind of stuck. Dwayne, thanks for. I'm a product designer looking to automate my team's project management process. Receive a vague Asana to clear design brief and clear documentation. Yes. Okay, cool. So who else? We've got Jack. Jack, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Nice to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, good to have you. It's always good to have friends show up and crash the party. All right. Well, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to get started to respect all of your time. And I like to make this fun. And again, for those people who are coming into this session, we're going to focus on deconstructing your workflows for agentic AI. And the purpose of really this is to kind of show you a process around how I actually do that. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but for those of people who are coming into the room, a quick little icebreaker. Imagine you've got this workflow that you want to reimagine, or you've got this really important business process. On a scale to 1 to 5, like, how well do you think you really understand and you could describe this to someone? Right? Are you on a one where, hey, I'm just going to wing it? Or are you on the opposite extreme, which is, yeah, I'm really clear about how this thing works. I've mapped it out. I've got all the steps. I'm really clear about it. And just, yeah, just go ahead and put a kind of 1 to 5, and that'll just kind of give me an idea of kind of where everybody's at. Two, this is very normal. A three, okay. A three? Okay, good, good. Well, maybe y'all can teach me as we go through this. So let's just go ahead and get through it. So as we go through, just go ahead and add your questions to chat. And at the end, I'll answer as many as I can. Last Friday I did this, and it was a half hour. And we were having so much fun that it turned out to be an hour. I'm not saying it's going to be an hour, but I want to make sure you leave with as much nuggets as possible. And I can share all the things that I've learned, right? Kind of doing this for my one-person business and also teaching people this methodology in my course. Okay, so that's me. I know some of you know me. Let me turn on the note taker for people to do that. I've been in the data and AI space for a gazillion years. Did my master's at Berkeley, teach at Berkeley, an AI strategy course. And of course, I do my own courses because I love kind of meeting interesting people. I also do some consulting and some fractional work. And if you want to get some things from me occasionally around my newsletter, feel free to join that on Substack. And so why are we here? And I see this all the time. We want to automate something, but we can't articulate what it is. And I remind people a lot of times, like, are these AI tools, they're not mind readers, right? We can't expect them to take something we have in our head and really automate it. And that really hits people when they actually get down to trying to do this. And so we might say it something high level, again, just to be extremes, automate my lead gen process. Well, if you look at what AI really needs to apply the technology, right? Which flow are we talking about? What are the business outcomes? What are the steps? How do we execute the steps? How specific do we need to be? What are the triggers? What about all these edge cases, right? And this is where people get stuck. They're not in a position to articulate them because they're trying to take on something that's too high level. And hopefully that makes sense. So what are we going to learn together? I'm going to show you at least my methodology of how do I go about identifying the businesses and processes. And the key thing is we need to touch them. We need to name them, the processes, and we need to name and touch the workflows that enable that process to kind of function, right? Because that's how we deliver value. Then what we're going to do, we're going to take one of those workflows, and I'm just going to take you through the process that I think are going to be really helpful for some of you who have something that you really want to automate or augment. And I'm going to show you the process that I use and a meta prompting technique to actually have AI write these steps and write some of the instructions. And then the last thing that I'm going to leave you with that I've learned is that, okay, we've broken this thing down. We understand functionally how it works. The other thing that I have found can be really helpful is then we need to document, and a lot of people don't need to document. We need to document what is this process and what are these workflows, meaning how do they work together, right? So I'm going to show you how I do that. I don't do it all alone. I do it with Claude to produce an SOP and guide. So let's first talk about, how do we go about identifying our business processes? This is how I do it. Again, I'm going to share just how I do it. The first thing that I would do, let's say you've got this process or this workflow, and you really want to get down to the building blocks and understand how it works. What I do, I use Claude a lot. I create a project, and I've got a couple projects here for my course. And I create a project because why? I want to build up all the memory. I want to build up all the context so that I can start having a conversation, in my case, Claude, around the work that I do as an instructor, right? And so what that allows me to do is when I can talk to it, it has context of what I do, and I'm in a position to start kind of working with it as a thought partner. And then the other thing that I do is I set up a database because as we go through this process, we're going to need to catalog and register what our workflows are, excuse me, what our business process is, what are the workflows within that business process. And then the other thing is we need to identify, as we go through this deconstruction process, we need to identify what are the AI building blocks that we're going to need. Last Friday, one of the building blocks I went deep on was skills, right? So we're going to need to catalog this stuff because we're never going to remember it. Okay, so those are kind of the two things that I do from a setup perspective. I use Notion to capture all my stuff, and I'm going to show you some examples. So this is kind of my deconstruction process. And really what I want to focus on, what I do here, is I use AI as a thought partner. So these are all the steps that I go through, and you'll see, I've got these little blocks of AI. I am talking, in my case with Claude, and what I do is I create a project and then I start having a conversation around this process or this workflow that I don't really understand and that I need help with. And so this is really, as you go through this decomposition process, I'm not doing it alone. And I'm going to focus on this first step around how I actually go about identifying and breaking it down. I'm going to talk to Claude, and it's going to help me identify what are these processes and what are workflows. And in the second step of our lightning session, I'm going to take you at a high level through all the building blocks so that you can get down to actually building it. But the first thing that we need to do is identifying it. So this actually is a real thing that last weekend, I'm an instructor, and there was a workflow that I had identified, but it felt too big. It just felt too big. It felt like there was like so much there. And so here's what I did. This is the actual example screenshot. I talked to Claude like I did a little role playing, and I said, "You are a business architecture process expert. I need your help to review this workflow that I do around designing courses and content and everything else." And in so many words, I said, "Hey, I've got a lot of tasks here, and I'm wondering if this should be one workflow or more than one, right?" So what am I doing? I'm collaborating with Claude. I need your help. I'm looking at this workflow. I don't really know if it's too big, too small. And what did it do, right? What did it do? It read the metadata out of my Notion database, where is my cataloging system. And again, I'm going to show you an example. And then what did it do? It said, "Hey, now that I have a complete picture of this thing," it came back with a recommendation, right? I didn't make this up, but it knows enough about me, about the work that I do, and said, "Oh, hey, James, what I would do, this thing is too big. What I recommend is that you break it down into these 4 workflows that have very specific deliverables." Right? So it took this big nebulous thing that I had, and I was feeling it was too big, and I just asked Claude to help me. And what did it do? It broke down into these 4 workflows. What is the key? We need to name the workflow, and we need to get a really good description of the workflow, and we got to be clear about what the deliverable is, right? Could you do this by yourself? Yes, but it's going to take a lot longer, right? So it identified 4 workflows, right? And feel free to put comments as you're going through here. Feel free to put comments in here, and if it's related to kind of what I'm talking about, feel free, and I'll answer it kind of live. But hopefully this makes sense. It identified the workflows. And not only that, it identified the skills, because I have also that in my Notion database. So now, instead of this one thing, I've got it decomposed. It's going to be a lot easier to operationalize this workflow because it's smaller. And so let me show you in my registry how I've cataloged this. So I took this big thing, I riffed with Claude. It said, "James, break these things into 4 named workflows." And that's what you see on the left here. You see a process, which is course development. Claude recommended, break it down, James, break it down into these 4 things. And by the way, everything that you see on this page, Claude wrote that for me. It named the workflow, it named the description, it named the process outcome, it named the trigger. It actually put the sequence of the ordering of these workflows. And if you know what skills are, right? I've had to build these up. If you don't know what skills, watch my session from last Friday. And now I have a clear linkage between this process that I do of course development into lower level workflows. And it's those workflows that can be then operationalized. So hopefully this makes sense. We need to register and catalog what these things are. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, because if you can't touch them, if you can't name them, there's going to be no way that you're going to be able to operationalize them and apply, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and so now we've got, let's say, a process. We've got, in my case, these 4 workflows around the work that I do around developing courses. Okay, the next thing, I'm going to take you through the process of actually how I decompose these things so that I can build them out. And so just a reminder, as we go through this decomposition process, I'm going to take you through the workflow. One of the key things we want to do is we want to identify what are the building blocks that we're going to need to actually operationalize it. So it's not only decomposing this workflow, and we're going to take one of them. As we go through this, we need to identify these building blocks, because it's going to be these building blocks that are going to be used to operationalize the workflow. Hopefully that's pretty makes sense. Again, I'm not going to read through all of these things, but most of you probably know what these things are. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to come off slideshow mode, and I'm just going to take us through step by step. Again, I'm going to have to hit this pretty high level. All right. But the first thing, as I mentioned, we're going to name and break down, as we did in the first step, name the process, have AI help you identify what these workflows are. And then the next thing I do is I go into Claude in my case, and I just riff with it to deconstruct this workflow into more detailed steps. And so this approach is more applicable, right, to a more deterministic process, less of an agent design. But what do we need to do? We need to take this workflow, and the next step is we need to break it down into steps. And I don't do this by myself. A lot of times, what am I doing? I am talking with voice to text, and I'm just describing this workflow, and Claude is helping me get down to the actual steps. Hopefully that's clear. Okay. And then the next thing I do after I do that, I think about each step, and I ask my set question, and I don't do this by myself. What are the pieces of context, and I've got an example here, that the workflow is going to need to actually perform that step? So for example, and I'll show you a real example here around a markdown file, if I want to find new prospects on LinkedIn, I need to be clear about who the buyer persona is. Who's the right buyer? That's an example of a step that if I want a workflow that says go to LinkedIn and find me qualified buyers, I need to provide the AI with a buyer persona. And I'll show you an example of what that is. So go through, identify what your pieces of context are. Now, as you decompose the workflow, again, riffing with your favorite AI tool, getting down to the steps. The other thing you need to ask yourself is, what are the applications that I need that are a part of the business process, right? And as you're going through this decomposition process, if you need to impart your domain expertise, if you think this thing is too big or too nebulous, have that conversation. Just like I did when I said, hey, there's this big thing. I think it needs to be broken down. Just get into some really rich conversation around imparting your domain expertise. So we identify the applications. And then the other thing, as we get down to steps, and as we get down to steps, and this is what I kind of taught last Friday, ask the AI for that step, is that step or task suitable to be packaged up with a skill? And thanks, Jim, for putting that link in the chat, which is the video from my lightning session last week. Feel free to watch that. But what am I doing here? I now understand the steps. I then ask Claude, in my case, hey, is that something that should be packaged up as a skill? And what's a skill? It's the how-to manual to perform that step. So if you're not using skills, I highly, highly recommend it, because why did those get created? It is because in a lot of cases, for us to execute very reliable, repeatable workflows, we need to give the AI the how-to manual. And that's what skills are. They are the packaged up how-to manual to perform that task. And again, AI is not, it's only going to do, right, in most cases, of what you've articulated. Okay, so we've broken it down. We've identified things that are skills. And then what I would recommend in your workflow, actually build and test out the skills in that same conversation, right? Because it's got context. You've broken this down into workflow, you've broken it down to steps, you've got all that rich history in the context window. Just ask Claude, right now it's only on the Claude platform, hey, go ahead, you recommended these skills, help me go build them out, right? Help me go build them out. And then the last thing I do is after I build them out, I register the skills in my Notion database so that I'm really clear for this workflow, for these steps, the how-to manual is that. And I kind of showed that, and I'm happy to review it again. What's the key? The key is every workflow you need to have, you need to identify the building blocks that power that. And if you don't understand that, it's going to be a mess because you're not going to understand dependencies. And then the last step I do is now that I've got this, I ask and I help, right? I ask Claude in this case, hey, help me really co-write this workflow. And of course, we're going to need to test it. Okay, we're going to need to test it. So one of the things you can do around how I do that, you need to get down right to a workflow with some clear steps. As I mentioned, impart your domain expertise. If you've got an existing SOP around your process, feed it to the LLM and refine it. As I mentioned, the other thing I do a lot, I hardly type anymore. Get a tool like Whisperflow or something and just speak to it, because a lot of times there's this translation loss between something that's in our head and how we type it. I've got my microphone here. I just hit the button and I just tell Claude what I'm thinking, and that's going to be a lot quicker, faster, probably a richer way to actually get it as a thought partner. And then of course we need to test it. Okay, so let's take a real example here. And what am I doing here? I want a meta prompting technique, and I'm asking Claude in this case, help me write these instructions. Help me break down this workflow into a series of steps. And so I did a little bit of meta prompting around you're an expert designer and prompt engineer, right, who writes these clear instructions. And I'm saying, hey, I need some help around the outcome I want is to grow my pipeline, and I need to identify prospects. And so what I do a lot of times, I kind of know the high level steps, right? And most of us do because, right, we're deep in our domain, we're clear about the work. And so one approach, stub out just the high level steps, right? In my case, it's something like review this buyer persona, open up LinkedIn.com, search for 5 prospects, summarize the prospects, and then just save the markdown file. So what are we doing here? We're doing a little bit of role playing, and we're just being clear about the high level steps, right? And it's going to become really clear that those 5 steps are too high, okay? And so this is the actual real example that I built. And what do we have on the right? We have Claude will produce a markdown file, but you can do this in any AI tool. And what are we doing? We're getting down to the name steps, right? For that workflow, what are the steps? In my case, the first one, analyze the buyer persona. Step 2, access LinkedIn. Step 3, search for matching prospects. And I'll just say, I would highly recommend, and this is what I do, and it's the note on the right, ask your AI tool to look at those steps and say, should any of those steps be packaged up in a skill? In a lot of cases, it's going to be yes. And again, the reason is because search for matching prospects. If I asked everybody who's on our call today to go do that task, you're probably all going to do it in completely different ways. So what do we need to do? We need to encapsulate these steps that are very specific, where we've got procedural control, and we need to package it up as a skill. So if you didn't see my skill session, follow the link that Jim posted in there, and I do an hour whole session around packaging up and how to use skills, okay? So hopefully this is clear. We've done some meta prompting, we get a high-level workflow, we get our steps, we then go build some skills, and then here's what happens, is that the prompt around executing that workflow gets a lot smaller. Why? Is because we've done the work to package up the how to do these steps in a skill. And those skills are called automatic. So instead of a workflow prompt of like 500 lines, it's going to be a lot smaller, because in the prompt, search for matching prospects, I'm likely going to have a skill that tells Claude how to perform step 3, right? So it's going to be a lot smaller. It's going to be a lot easier to test because you're breaking some things into some skills. Now, how am I doing on time? About 20 after. Here's a real example. As I design my workflow around finding me prospects, you're going to realize that your AI is going to need some context. The way I do it, again, I collaborate in my case with Claude and I say, hey, I've got this workflow. I've got this step, which is finding prospects, right? AI is only going to find me good prospects if I give it context of what a good prospect looks like. Again, how is this identified? It's identified as you break that workflow down into steps and you realize, oh, hey, on step 3, when I'm going to go search for people, I need to understand who the buyer is. So this is a real example where I had a named prospect and I asked Claude, I said, hey, create me a buyer persona. In this case, it was named revenue leader Rachel. I didn't write any of that, right? But what I needed to do is I said, hey, Claude, I need a buyer persona. And I'm not like a marketer by trade. And it created me a very beautiful markdown file that I can impart and give to the workflow to find me the right people. So I just wanted to make sure I reinforce that you're going to need this context. My recommendation, save these things as markdown files. Why? Because markdown is just text. There's no translation. The model is going to see exactly what you have in the markdown file. Again, you don't have to create these from scratch. Just ask your AI to do that. Okay, so the last part, right? Just to recap, step 2 there, or outcome 2 of our lightning lesson, is we've broken this workflow down. We've got some series of steps. We've got maybe some skills. We've got some instructions. Again, I rarely will ever write LLM instructions for the step by hand. I'm always going to do this meta prompting technique, asking AI to help me. Of course, we're going to riff and get more specific, but doing that together is going to give us a really good rich set of instructions. So here's the last thing that I realized is that, okay, great. We've gone through this whole thing. I have had this amazing conversation around this workflow. And that's what it is. There's so much beauty and so much knowledge there. So the last thing that I realized is that, okay, I am documenting my business. I'm breaking it down to processes. I'm finally getting really clear about what I do. And I know that sounds so stupid and so basic, but the last thing that I found is I've done this, is I've asked Claude, again, in my case, to help me to prepare documentation, right? I need 2 things. One is a workflow SOP, okay? So we've broken the business process down into these workflows. That's kind of what I just took you through. And now we have all of this really rich history around that workflow, how it works, all the skills that are involved in it. What I do, I then ask Claude to help me write this thing, the workflow. And here's why it's really, really helpful, is that if you go through this process, you're going to build up this beautiful catalog of your business processes and workflows. But when you go to use this a week from now, 2 months from now, and you actually maybe work through an augmented workflow, you're not going to remember how that workflow works. And what I mean that down to the level of all of the steps and all of the details, you're just not. I know I can't. You're just never going to remember it. So here's what I do. I ask Claude, it's got all the rich history, write this SOP, and I'll show you which ones look like. The other thing that I do in this design process, now that I have all these workflows in the business process, the other thing I ask Claude to do is to write me a process guide. What's the process guide? The process guide tells me and describes what is the business process and what are all the workflows that participate in the business process. Does that make sense? Right? Because again, there's a lot of details here. And if you don't understand how these workflows come together to deliver a business process outcome, you are never going to really be able to encapsulate the unique business knowledge around your business, around your workflows. Okay? So I'm going to show you a real example. As I mentioned as well, you'll see on the right, for every workflow that I have in my Notion database, I know exactly every prompt, every skill, every agent, every piece of context that is required to that workflow to operate, right? There's no mystery. And this is going to be really important because if you don't understand the building blocks and the dependencies, you're going to be dependent on these workflows to do your work. But if you don't have some hygiene around, right, your prompts and skills, that's going to be a problem. So here's a real example. Like literally, this is a real example, and hopefully you can see it in here. What did Claude do? It helped me again break this big thing that was a business process with something like course design or course development. It said James is too big, and so it identified these 4 workflows. Right, that's what it did, and this is in context because I've had this conversation with Claude. Now, the little kind of funny bot person down there, Claude said, "Hey, want me to write this proper SOP into the course design workflow page body in Notion?" Right? So it's helping me do this very tedious thing about all of the rich history now around this workflow that it helped me design, and it's saying to me, "Hey, James, do you want me to go write that for you?" Now, I realized that this was really, really valuable because I was expending all this energy getting down to this workflow and really, really understanding it. So what did I do? I wrote a Claude skill, and you can see it there, writing workflow SOPs. And what is that? It's a skill that basically Claude knows how to write an SOP and knows where to stick it in my Notion database. So again, I am not doing any of this by myself other than having a really rich conversation with Claude in my case. And so what do I say? I said, hey, let's go ahead and write the SOP for this particular workflow. And by the way, that's no typing. I'm like literally talking to Claude in my microphone. And I'm saying, yeah, go ahead and write that. And hey, by the way, just make sure these updated skills are also that are also as part of the SOP. Okay. And here's what looks like, right? This process, course development, again, one of the things that I love doing, which is hopefully why you're here, broke it down into these 4 workflows. And on the right, that document is in a Notion database that describes that particular workflow. And so you see here in the procedure, there's an overview, there's some prerequisites, there's some triggers, and Claude has documented what are all the steps in that particular workflow. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Now, you'll see, and this is really important, a lot of the work that I do is augmentation, meaning I want to be awesome what I do. And so Claude helps me do that, hopefully better, faster, and more consistent. You'll see step 1 is the AI task. It's helping me generate some course name options. Step 2, as a human, I need to select this thing, right? So when you write or you have your AI write, be holistic because your workflows are going to have places where you interact with the workflow. Hopefully that makes sense. And so you're going to have this beautiful SOP so that if a month from now, I need to actually go and design a new course, I'm not showing up on my computer with a blank screen. I'm going to say, great, let's get into this workflow. And if I don't know how it works and I need to refresh myself because maybe it's been months, I'm going to go to the SOP and I have a really good documented workflow or the steps of how that happens. Hopefully, I'm hoping everybody sees the value of why that's really precious, right? And that's all the workflows. And then I kind of wrap it all up where I have Claude write me a process guide. And a process guide just connects the workflows that are in the process. So the process is called course development. And again, it wrote this whole thing, right? It wrote this whole thing and just said, hey, this is the big picture. You do workflow 1, and then you move to workflow 2. So again, when I'm about to create a new course, I'm going to go here. I'm going to refresh myself. Okay, I need to go do this, right? And so I'm really clear. There's no mystery. So what's the point? The point is when you invest a lot of time identifying the process, identifying the workflows, I'm not saying you need, it's going to be very valuable to then catalog these and then write a summary, have your AI help you write a summary about the so what, so that you can really encapsulate that domain expertise. So hopefully that's clear. But again, I'll happy to take questions on any of this. So if you want to have like a lot of fun with me, I know a lot of you know me. Feel free to. Oh, that's the wrong link up there. Feel free. No, that is the right link. Feel free to check out my course. It's a lot of fun. Pretty highly rated. And this is really for people who want to build, right? Don't join this course if you just want to sit and listen. Two live sessions per week, 2 sessions, morning session, afternoon session, joins the one you want. I think what people really love about this course is that I host office hours, but the other thing I do is I meet with people one-on-one. And where this is valuable, people are going to get stuck operationalizing the workflow. Just think about me as your free consultant for 4 weeks to help you do that. So check it out. It's a lot of fun. And if you want to understand how this whole notion works around the catalog and stuff like that, I have a series. We're going to culminate next Friday, and I'm going to show you how to build this registry around the Notion database if you want to understand this in a little bit more detail. I have to say, this has been a game changer for me, and I'm going to share all of my things that I've known around how to do this. It's not rocket science. But the key is you need a living, breathing registry of all of your workflows and all of the AI tools that power this. Okay, so I'm going to take some questions. Those are some links if you want to grab the links. What can I answer? And feel free to come off mute because I like to have fun with y'all. Let's see. Did that all make sense? I know I went through it. It was a pretty quick session. But feel free to put into chat, what did you learn? Was there something that you learned through there? Was maybe a little bit of aha? And I'll just answer some questions as we go through. Are you using Sonnet 4.5 for the prompts? Yeah, in a lot of cases. But I also use Opus if I need to think and iterate a bit. And so I do. I find when I'm doing this kind of work, having the chat and having the conversation in a project, I find really, really helpful because I'm building up with Claude, the memory around that specific topic. In my case, it's around my course. Okay, so how to manual skills for the steps in the work, not the full workflow itself. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, in the workflow, you do need to get down to the steps. Really, my point is that these steps to actually execute the steps in the workflow, you're going to need to get down to some very specific details around how to do that thing. And skills, in my view, are the best way to operationalize how to do that. Again, for those of you, see the link that Jim put it here in the chat, and I do a whole hour session around how to do that. Did you have to create the skills beforehand, or does it do it for you? This is a really good question, Shade. I love this. So again, as you're riffing, as you're having this beautiful conversation, I just ask Claude, hey, Claude, given those steps, which ones would you recommend we package up as skills? And it will give you a list. And that's what it gave me. It gave me a list. And then it's probably going to say, hey, would you like to go write those now? And a lot of times I will. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go write them. So again, you get a collaboration partner with you, and you can just write those skills right now. And that's what I do. And then after I write them, they are registered in my Notion database so that I know kind of what they are and when they should be used. So that's kind of how I do that. Hopefully that's pretty helpful. Let's see. Let's see. What are the questions here? Clearly, your preference is to work with Claude for this procedure, but have you done the kind of study with other tools? So, yeah. So I guess let me clarify. This is a really good question that Matthew. So I don't get so caught up in the tool, right? I use all of them. I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT. Right now I'm partial to Claude because of the skills capability. And if you're building out a workflow and you really want a really great way to package up your expertise, Claude Skills is the best way to do that. All these other platforms skills are already in the developer tools. They're going to be there in the other tools. It's just a matter of time. So that's why I've really been a big fan of Claude. It's just that Skills is really a game changer. At least that's my own experience. Where are you capturing the authenticated login in Notion? Yeah, so my Claude is connected to Notion, and this is really beautiful. And again, if you want to go deeper on it next Friday, come to talk to that. But just think about this. This is really good question that she asked. When I am doing work on these processes and design the whole thing, every all of my metadata around my course, and I'm happy to show you like my actual example. I've got all the metadata around my course and my lessons and all that stuff. So when I'm talking with Claude and I'm designing something, it's just not me typing. I say things like, "Hey, Claude, go read this one lesson." And it's going to read the description and all the details. I think we need to do this. What do you think? So the Notion database really serves as a repository for, let's say, the type of work you do. So I feel like I've got not only a rich AI partner, but I also have a really good storage of at least my IP, again, in my case, as a course instructor. Um, let's see. What does it mean when you say not for software engineers, but for builders? Yeah. I guess what I'm saying here is that in terms of the course, right, people who are hardcore software developers, um, maybe know some of these techniques and so forth. So that was really my own thing. When I say builders, I mean leaders and professionals who really want to operationalize AI, and they want to take this business process approach, and then they actually want to go build it, right? Not leave it to, let's say, engineers, but people who actually want to build the workflows on the AI platforms of choice. My course, we do it in Claude, we do it in Gemini, we do it in ChatGPT, of course, in M365, and of course, each of those platforms have different kind of tools. And so that was really the point in terms of software engineers of what I meant by that. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Well, Sydney, great to have you. When do subagents come into play, in which scenarios? This is another really good question as well. Um, and we do cover this in my course specifically as well. This question. So in the example that I did in terms of breaking it down was probably more imparted for a lot of more deterministic workflows. But if you have, let's say, some more open-ended um, uh, uh, scenario where you want to let one or more agents control the logic in the flow, then that's a really good pattern for using Claude subagents, where you decompose things into workers who are those agents. Again, you give them some really great skills to go do their work, and then you're just giving Claude, in this case, the outcome and the problem, and it's delegating automatically to these subagents to kind of do the work. So in cases where you need very reliable repeatability, or you need an augmented workflow, like for me in terms of doing course design, what I showed you here is more important, more appropriate. But if you've got this, hey, I don't know how to do it. I mean, I don't know the workflow, and I want to let the LLMs and the agents work together. That's a great use case for really kind of giving it a goal and having the subagents figure it out. Let's see. Might have missed it. Could you please explain how the initial process came into the Notion database? Maybe Vignesh, maybe you can say a little bit more about. Oh, I think you're saying how did the initial one? This is a good question. So let me just go ahead and if would you all like to see my actual Notion database? Would that be helpful? I'm happy to share that. So this is let me kind of go here. This is my actual Notion database, right? And I think what Vignesh is asking is hey, you kind of showed us this one, right? And so the initial one, and I'll make this a little bigger, the initial one that got in there was something the way that initial one got is I just riffed with Claude and hey, there's this work that I do, course development, and Claude helped me identify that, right? So hopefully that helped. Meaning, hey Claude, I want to really get clear about what my business is, and I don't have anything documented. And we basically identified this first one. It was kind of a workflow of course development. So that's how the first one got in there, Vignesh and everybody else. It's just okay, great. Now I've identified this thing that I do. Perfect. Okay, wouldn't it be a really good idea now for me to store that? So that's how the first one got in there. And frankly, I used this one at that level for a couple weeks. And then recently, a week or two ago, as I went to go use that, I'm like, gosh, this thing seems too big. It's just it's too big. And that's when I got into this really good, rich conversation with Claude in my case to help me break that down. And that's what it did. It said we broke that thing down. And by the way, everything here, Claude basically Claude put in there. There was no typing in any of this. And any of you can get and do something similar. So that's actually what my registry looks like. And again, if you want to learn more, join me next Friday. Okay. Can workflows be connected to other apps, like using an agent to build a workflow diagrams in Canva, or as using an agent? Yeah, I mean they can. I mean, if you think about, and I know this is more what kind of workflows, but I'll answer that. Again, agents, right, are kind of they are right. They're workers, and agents need tools. So sure, you can connect that particular. It can be a workflow too if you want it to be connected to those tools, right? All of the you want the link to, okay. I'll find it here while I'm talking to you. Again, I'm not here to pitch my next lightning session, but I think if you found this interesting, then come next week. I think it'll be really helpful. Okay, copy the link. Here it is for you. Thanks. There you go. I think again, where was I? Oh, about the applications, right? Claude, ChatGPT, they all have really good integrations to these apps. And again, if you can be clear about what you want, they do a really good job of integrating with the apps. Like in my case, all the work that I do every single day is around right, creating courses, refining courses, and of course I do some other things beyond the courses. But if I didn't have the storage of all my workflows and all my processes, I wouldn't nearly be, and it's a journey. I wouldn't be nearly on this journey to really operationalizing it with AI, right? It's kind of what he said at the beginning. If we can't articulate it, I'm sorry, like you're not going to be able to operationalize with AI. And I know that sounds so basic, but that generally happens to people once they get down to the brass tacks and realize that the thing they're trying to do, they haven't articulated it down into these workflows and these steps. So hopefully that makes sense. What other questions that you have? Was this helpful? Feel free to come off mute. I'm happy to stay a little bit longer if there's something that you're curious about that I didn't cover, or maybe something that I did cover that didn't make sense. Jump in and we'll have some fun.
Can I ask you a question? This is Shide. How you doing?
Hey, we're good. Good to see you.
Okay, I didn't understand it. So did you have to create the data model in Notion to register your courses,
This is a really
or
good.
Claude did it for you?
Yeah, Claude did it. Oh, so when I started this, I had created a few databases, right? So if you look up here up in the upper left, right, this worked for me as an instructor. You see all these
Mhm.
databases here. Now I'm a database person by design, but let's say you're not, right? Claude, it created some of those because I didn't have them. That's one. And then even if you have them, you might come to realize that they need to be broken down into a little bit more detail. Right. So again, to say your point, just ask your AI to just tell it what you want. Right. Just tell it what you want. Like in my case, you see down here, I have these databases, I have processes and workflows. There was certain properties in here around my workflow that maybe when I started, I might have had 5 properties. And then as I really started to work and realized that I needed some richness to the cataloging of a workflow, Claude just added some additional ones to the right, right? So that's what it did. Claude, as long as you have the MCP connection, this works widely. You don't have to be a database person. Just tell, again, I say Claude, but it can be any tool, that AI tool that's got connectivity to Notion, and Notion's fairly popular. And then you get something really, here, you get something very powerful. And the other thing that I've realized is that once you can touch these things, right? Once you can touch these things, like in my case, I do a lot of course development. I feel like lower stress. Why? Because I finally know what I do and how to do it. So it brings a set of ease that when you're in the machine of in your job and doing stuff, you're like, you're actually executing. And that can make a big difference around your productivity and outcomes because you've taken some time. And I know it sounds so basic, You've taken some time to just get rigorous about what you do, right? And then as you build up your inventory of workflows and how those things get done, meaning in this assets column, for me to develop a new course, these are the 4 skills that I use. Okay. Naming a Maven
Mhm.
course. I've got a skill of how I name the course, right? Because there's a lot of thinking that goes into the naming of the course. And you'd be like, okay, really? Yeah. And not only that, I have linkage to my GitHub for every single skill that I do. Okay. So
Mhm.
when I mean hygiene, right? When you build up these workflows, when you go to operationalize them, you're gonna want your you're gonna want your source code, which in my case is just text skills. You're gonna want to save them in GitHub. At least that's my recommendation. So Shade, hopefully that answers your question. And just for
Yes.
everybody is just say what you want, right? Just say what you want. And the AIs, we're going to build out all this for you. I mean, what I had, like, there's sometimes you could take a screenshot, right? Take a screenshot and just say, hey, I want the same things, and Claude automatically do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, Rosemary.
Hey, I have
Hey,
loved this. I'm a big Notion user,
cool.
big Claude user. This actually really touches on a bunch of stuff in terms of my team processes that I have struggled to get them aligned to and set the right expectations. And so this could potentially really half a lot of work that I go into, just kind of scaling my team.
Yes.
Question that I have for you is watching you sort of build these things has been great. How, once it's done, how does it sort of figure in your day to day? Like, how do you use this workflow? I'm just trying to sort of add a period to the end of this sentence because
Yeah.
I'm a very visual person. So, do you
Yeah.
go into the workflow and like use the document or
Yes.
input it and then automate it? Tell me more.
Great question, because I've gotten that question before, and let's do. I actually did this on last Friday as well, but let's actually do a scenario together. Like literally, let's do it,
Amazing.
right?
Awesome.
And thank you for the comment. And I think this is really good for teams, as you said, Rosemary.
Yeah.
Just a +1 on that. And what I realize in my current cohort, I've got a couple folks in my cohort who kind of lead sales teams. And as they took like something that they wanted to operationalize in the course, because I usually like people, they realized that what they were trying to do, they just weren't clear about what it was. But it didn't
Yeah.
hit them until they like looked at it and like, yeah, like, like, oh my gosh, we don't have nearly much detail. So, and to your point, to scale a team, and it's also like, this is why I think it's really important to leader, and we'll actually go through it, is that what are we doing here, right? We're encapsulating the IP of how we do work. What could be more valuable than that, right? And as a lot of our processes and workflows really get enabled by AI, right? As leaders move and things like that, if I'm not saying you specifically, Rosemary, but imagine that again, everything is in a GitHub repo around the process, around the skills, around the prompt. That is like gold. And so I just wanted to reinforce, right, for those people who might lead teams and things like that, these assets that you're creating are just beautiful IP. Okay, so let's take enough of my talking. Let's actually go and I'll take this one example, okay, of how I would use this workflow. All right. So and I actually did this recently, and this was what the catalyst of what not forced me is that last week I was thinking about creating a new course, right? And so I would and this could be like if this weekend I said, oh, I'm going to create a new course, I would say, okay, now let me go look at the first sequence, the first workflow. What do I need to do? Right. And so I might go here and I might kind of look at what are some of the steps. Oh, hey, maybe one of the first steps would be writing course outcomes, right? Let's just say we start there. So let's say I had this course in mind. What would I do? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here, and this is what I would do. I would go to a project. Now, I have a project for 2 of my courses, but let's just do this, and we'll just have a little bit of fun. What would be a good, I don't know, another course or something like that? I don't have to do it in there. This would be a course, but if I just do it in a regular chat, I might say, hey, I'm thinking about creating a new Maven course that helps people learn agentic coding. Can you help me with that? Right? And so, right, I would just start to get into this dialogue, right? And it might give me, some things. And so I might say something like, "Hey, I know I have a workflow in the Notion database. Can you kind of remind me how that works?" Right? And so I might just, and we'll see if it pops up here. Around. And so what is it doing in this example? It's going into Notion. And again, I probably should have been a little bit more specific around what specific workflow around that, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. Hey, yeah, I found this thing. Now let me go and fetch the main workflow or the page you need, right? Here's your steps. Okay. Right. Is this Rosemary kind of giving you an idea how I would do it? And so
Yeah.
let's say let's say I would start here and instead of maybe doing the course. Okay. Yeah, I need your help. Let's help me create a course name and give me some options. Right. So here's what it should do. You see what it does? It's calling up the skill for helping me name the course. Right. So what did I do? Every task that I would need to put a new course on Maven, I developed a skill around it. And then I packaged up those skills into a workflow. And so I'm going to go through this whole process to basically check every box, right? And this is what I would do. It said, okay, hey, James, like, hey, for me to help you with this, like, who's the target audience? What's the core transformation? And again, I would just get into some conversation. And then let's say I got the course outcome, right? I would probably go back I'd probably ask Claude, but let's say I got the course outcome here, right? Down here, step 3. I would then say, okay, hey, let's go write the course overview. Right? Now, do I know how to do all these things? Yes, like I've been doing it for a while. But I now have, right? I have a roadmap of how I do my work. Does that help Rosemary or anybody else around?
Fantastic. It was really great just to kind of see how you like sort of go through it and the ways in which and the Claude skills are really fantastic as well. So yeah, that's really, really helpful. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question because I get that a lot. And what I realized is, we're busy people a lot of times. And when we're in the machine of doing work, sometimes we might forget that we have this definition of the work that we do. We might forget that we actually have skills packaged up in Claude to do that. And so I find that this reminder, like, take me through the how-to manual. It reduces the stress because we've invested some time around this workflow and how it works. And then Claude knows the SOP. And it will just continue to guide you through the steps to complete that workflow. And in my case, designing a new course, I got to write I got to write course outcomes. I need to write the course overview. I need to think about the price, right? And so I need to go through all these things to at least go to the next step, which is actually designing a syllabus, right? So hopefully that gives you an idea of where I start. And these workflows are connected. And at the end of this main process, I've got a course, I've got lessons, I've got a syllabus, I've got a price, I've got a Maven landing page, right? A year ago, I used to do this all by myself, right? But I realized that I want to create other courses, and I just invested some time to really decompose the work that I do. Okay?
Yeah. It's really just about getting to sort of the first draft much, much faster, right? And then you can evaluate.
Yeah, you can. I like that because like in my case, I had one workflow and I was like, let's iterate, like it's too big. And so that's a really good point. you don't have to figure it all out, right? Just start. And again, I think projects are a really good construct that if you've got a topic or a process you're looking to operationalize, just start talking and building that up and having a thought partner to help you, right? And I think it's very tempting to just go do the work, build the problems, work. Like I love that. I'm a tech guy. But if I, at least from my own experience, if I don't have this, um, I'm just going to forget. And it's just because there's too many things that I do, right? And I know it
Yeah.
takes a little bit of time, but I think in Rosemary, in your point, if you're a team and part of you, for people who want to be really great leaders, documenting and understanding the work that they do so they can scale and bring new people in, and then also leave a really nice treasure chest of some great IP. Like, I just think that's golden.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. Let's see. So we've got, I don't know, about 4 minutes. Any other questions? I know, Shade, you've got a question. Anybody else want to put it in chat? Feel free to.
Um, so this is awesome. I learned so much from this course today. Thank you so
Good.
much. I
Yeah.
think that course development, then how you're doing the marketing part of it. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
would that be another step that you
That would
add at
be,
the end?
yeah, let's kind of let's just kind of take on that, right? And so I might say to Claude, okay, now I've developed this course. Can you help me develop some workflows around the marketing of it? Right. And so those would just be, that would be a whole other process. And I think yeah, here we go right here. I've got some processes around, right, student enrollment, right, a process around a nurture sequence and Maven waitlist campaign, right? And one really nice way to look at this is by your value chain, right? Like an example, right? So you see the marketing, right?
Mhm.
Marketing would be another domain. So again, if you think about the work that you do and the value chain that you do, my case, I'm building a course. Then the other thing that I need to do is I need to market it, right? Right. So the organization of business processes helps you really connect the work that you do and to think about the value chain. I didn't really think about that. I mean, conceptually in my head before I started to do this, do I realize I need to market? Of course, but I didn't identify it into named workflows. And again, when we can see it and touch it, we're in a better position to actually operationalize some AI around it. Does that help?
Yes. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Jaxie, what else? Anything else? I highly encourage you to go through this process. And again, just start talking to it, and you're going to eventually get down to something. And then once you feel the I don't know, the juice and the mojo from doing this, I think you'll just become obsessed. And I think here's what you're going to end up with. You're going to end up with, if you're on the cloud platform right now, you're going to end up with a treasure trove of skills that power your workflows. These are all of mine, right? Of the work I do as an instructor. I'm well over 50 something skills. And there was a question about the skill files. Those are loaded dynamically. If you go into Claude, this is really kind of the agentic approach is that when Claude goes and you ask it to do something, it knows every skill that you've got in the library, and then if it needs to use it, it will go and read the how-to manual to execute that work. And again, I did a whole hour session on this last week, and the link is in the chat. I'm happy to throw it again, but take a look at that. Have you beta tested the AI with Notion? I haven't, Stuart. I know a number of people have. I just haven't spent really time on it. It's probably something that I really should do. I know there's some really good features. Yeah. Um, and again, I'm showing you using Notion because I'm a one-person business, but again, it's more about what are we doing? We're capturing the metadata, right, of everything here. All right. What else? Anything else that I can answer before we leave? And if I don't answer, you're not going to be able to sleep tonight. Was this helpful for y'all? Okay, I got a thumbs up from Erica. Okay, very cool. Well, again, if you've got any questions, shoot me a note. I'm on LinkedIn as well. So I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. And I'll put that in I think I've got that here. So any of you who wants, even if, even if my course is not a fit for you, shoot me up on LinkedIn. And if any of you are interested in the course, the next one starts February 2nd. It's so much fun because I get to meet all kinds of interesting people around the world. If you're interested in a Claude specific course, I also have one starting on Monday, which is Claude and Claude Code for Builders, which is we focus specifically on Claude, the Claude platform, and going deep, and that's a 5-week thing. And this lightning session is really about this other course, but that one there's a 25% discount for the first cohort and founder because it is the first one. So if you're interested in that, that one starts next week, and that'll be a lot of fun as well, specifically on Claude. Okay, well, hey, I had so much fun with you all, and I look forward to, if you've got some questions, send me a note on LinkedIn. If you wanted to talk about your own scenario about like, hey, James, I don't know if this is right for me, and I want to maybe just riff with you for 10 minutes, shoot me a note, and I will send you a link for a Zoom chat, and we'll just talk through it, right, to ensure that it's a really good fit for you. All right, everybody. It's so good seeing some of my friends out there. And thanks for all the great questions that you asked. And hopefully you'll take away something that you can put into practice over the next days and weeks ahead. All right, everybody. Good seeing you. See you next Friday. Take care.